Hey, what's up everybody? I know the last couple weeks I've talked to you about shooting with your iPhone or your phone or just a simple camera and some tips and tricks that might take your photos kind of to the next level. Well, I figured I might as well take you out and actually show you some of that with my actual iPhone. So that's what we're gonna do this week. Thanks for stopping by for this week's 3 Minutes on Thursday. So here in Minnesota, back to the cold weather shooting theme. We got this ice storm the last couple days, and everything's got a ½ inch of ice on it, which kind of stinks for driving, but it makes for some cool photos. And believe it or not, your phone has a lot more manual settings than you believe. So I'll show you a few of those here today. We'll have, obviously with the snow, a real bright white element to what we're shooting. But off in the distance, you're gonna see there's kind of a dark background too. So I'm gonna show you some tricks to manually kind of swing back and forth between those that will help you to get hopefully good exposure on the photos. Then we'll take it inside and we'll look at even some of the most simple editing apps that are actually probably right inside your phone that will actually take those post-processing tips and tricks to the next level to make those photos really pop. So let's set up and take a look at shooting just this real simple weed that's here. And I'm just gonna do some really basic stuff on this kind of icy weed here. And like I said, your phone or your camera doesn't know what to focus on. It thinks it knows, but it might not know perfectly, but it also isn't gonna totally understand exposure. So I'm gonna hold down, I'm gonna touch my screen on the main part of this, and then I can slide up and down to control the exposure. I don't wanna blow out the highlights too much, but the stuff in the background is tricky, and the phone doesn't know that it wants to do that. So I'm focusing on that part right there. I'm also holding my exposure there, and then I'm going to burst mode here, and I'm gonna hold that down and take a bunch because the wind is kind of blowing this thing back and forth, which gets to be a little bit tricky. So what's up? We're back. We're gonna take a look actually at our phone here and show you a few tips and tricks right with the Photos app that's on the phone there. I'm gonna click on Photos, and I have I've selected one of these that we'll take a little bit closer look at that showed some pretty cool interest to it, but it also gave us some opportunity to do some edits. So I'm gonna click the edit button. And the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna touch crop, and I'm gonna just zoom us in just a little tighter, just a little bit more of that visual interest. I know during one of our last tips, I talked about doing that so that we filled up our frame, and indeed I'm gonna do that with the crop here. The next one down, the 3 circles, is actually some filters, which if you're into quick edits, then go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go to the next button down, which is gonna give me some settings. The first one being light, and there are 7 settings. 5 of those settings we're gonna take a look at. The first one being brilliance. Brilliance, I'm gonna slide up just to give a little bit more edge to things. The next one I'm gonna do in pairs, exposure and highlights together, and then I'm gonna do shadows and black point together. Very similar to what I showed you on my Lightroom tutorial earlier. I'm going to turn my exposure up just a little bit, and I'm going to turn my highlights down just a little bit. Gives just a little bit of edge to things. And then in the same light, I'm going to take my shadows and I'm going to lift them up a little bit so they get just a little bit lighter. But then I'm going to take my black point and I'm going to make things just a little bit blacker, and it just gives kind of a nice edge to things. Under color, I'm not going to mess with saturation or contrast, but cast is also going to either warm up or cool off the photo. And in this case, I'm going to cool it off just a little bit. Not so much that it's just baby blue in color, but just enough to give it a little bit more of a cool feel. Obviously, black and white will give you some other options if you're going to use a black and white photo. In this case, I'm not. So I'm going to hit close, and I'm going to hit done, and I'm going to call this photo good. Let's go and take a look at what this looks at side by side on the screen. You can see them side by side, that there's just a little bit more punch to the edited one. Nothing over the top, nothing that is gonna look too extravagant, and really, really processed. So I really like the look of it. This was all done within the Photos app on your phone, which is pretty slick. Hopefully one of these weeks, we'll be able to talk about warm weather shooting and all the perils that shooting in the heat and the sun brings upon us. It seems like all we've talked about is cold weather stuff up to this point, but maybe we'll start talking, I don't know, sunscreen and sunburn, fun stuff like that. So thanks for tuning in this week. to 3 Minutes on Thursday. If you're enjoying these tips, hit the subscribe button. Appreciate you stopping by again this week. We'll see you next time.